There's a demon living inside you. Well, not the kind you see in old paintings with horns and claws, but something worse, something that looks exactly like you. It wears your face, it speaks with your voice, and it waits for the right moment to take control. You know this demon well. It's the burning heat in your chest when someone cuts you off in traffic. It's the fire in your stomach when your boss talks down to you. It's the eruption in your throat when a friend disrespects you, or when life simply refuses to bend to your will. You tell yourself it's strength, that it proves you're alive, that it shows you care. But here's the truth most people never want to hear. Anger isn't power. Anger is slavery. Every time you lash out, every time you snap, every time you let rage drag you by the throat, you're not winning. You're owned. Someone else pulls the strings, and you dance like a puppet. You think you're intimidating, but you're predictable. You think you're strong, but you're exposed. And the cruelest part, the people who provoke you know it. They know all they have to do is poke the wound, whisper the right insult, deny you something small, and you'll explode on cue. That's the demon, the one you've been feeding your entire life. And the more you feed it, the more it grows, ruining your relationships, clouding your judgment, making you weak while convincing you you're strong. Most men never escape it. They live their entire lives, chained to anger, mistaking their leash for a sword. But once in a time drenched in war and blood, a man walked the earth who killed that demon. He didn't kill it by suppressing it, and he didn't kill it by pretending he was above it. He strangled it in silence. His name was Miyamoto Musashi, a warrior so deadly that his legend still terrifies people centuries later. Musashi fought more than 60 duels where the price of losing was death, and he never lost a single one. Not because he was the strongest, not because he was the fastest, but because in the moment where other men burned with rage, he stood empty, silent, still, untouchable. And this is the secret most people miss. Musashi wasn't just a swordsman, he was an executioner of ego, a master of self-control, a war machine wrapped in silence. He didn't fight anger, he buried it. And if you learn his way, you can too. Anger is a puppet string. Let's strip away the lies you've been telling yourself. Anger doesn't make you strong, it makes you owned. Every time you let it take over, you're handing your enemy the remote control to your life. Think about it. How many times have you exploded, only to regret it later? How many times did you say something in rage that you could never take back? How many times did someone poke at you, not because they cared about the argument, but because they wanted to see you squirm? That's the truth. Anger is a puppet string, and you are the toy. It doesn't matter how big your muscles are, how sharp your words sound, or how intimidating you think you look. If someone can make you angry, they can control you. They can drag you into fights you can't win, distract you from your real goals, and expose every weakness you tried to hide. You become predictable. They know exactly which buttons to press, and you will press them for them. Musashi understood this long before modern psychology gave it words. He saw it in battle after battle. Warriors who fought with rage always died first. They swung their blades harder, screamed louder, moved faster, but their moves were transparent. Their rage didn't make them unpredictable. It made them easy to read. And once you're predictable in a fight where death is the prize, you're already a corpse waiting to hit the dirt. Musashi realized something most men still never figure out. Anger isn't strength. It's a leash. It's the easiest way for your enemy to guide you exactly where they want. That's why he trained to cut those strings. He trained not just his body, but his mind, to be unshakable. He turned silence into armor, calm into a weapon. When others screamed, he watched. When others lost control, he calculated. His composure was terrifying, not because he lacked emotions, but because he refused to be enslaved by them. Marcus Aurelius, The Stoic emperor wrote, "When you are disturbed by external things, it is not they that trouble you, but your own judgment of them." Musashi embodied this truth centuries before most of the world could grasp it. If someone could make him angry, it meant they owned him, and no warrior with pride worth spilling blood for would ever accept that. So he became a void, a man without strings, without triggers, without buttons to press. Now here's the uncomfortable part. What makes you angry? Is it disrespect? Is it rejection? Is it losing? Whatever it is, that's the handle. Your enemy will grab every time they want to move you, and they will move you. That co-worker who knows you hate being ignored, they'll ignore you just to make you break. That friend who knows your pride is fragile, they'll jab at it until you snap. That stranger on the road who cuts you off, they're not even thinking about you, but suddenly your blood pressure spikes. Your hands tighten, and you're ready to throw your life away for a few seconds of fury. You call it strength, but it's slavery, and the demon smiles every time you feed it. Musashi knew better. He became terrifying, not because of his sword, not because of his size, not even because of his skill, but because he was unprovocable. That's the kind of man who wins wars before they begin. Imagine standing across from him in a duel, trying to insult him, trying to rattle him, only to see his eyes empty, his face calm, his stance still. Nothing you say matters. Nothing you do gets a rise. You're dancing alone, raging in circles, while he waits for the perfect moment to end it. That silence, that void was his deadliest weapon. Real strength isn't how loud you yell. It isn't how hard you hit. It isn't how quickly you explode. Real strength is how impossible you are to provoke. Because when no one can control your emotions, no one can control you. And when no one can control you, you become dangerous in ways anger could never touch. But Musashi didn't just understand this as an idea. He proved it in blood. And the first time he truly showed the world how lethal calm could be, he was still just a young man, barely out of his teens, facing one of the finest swordsmen in Japan. What happened next became one of the earliest chapters in the making of a legend. But that wasn't the whole story. Musashi was about to show how silence could kill faster than rage. The first time Musashi killed anger. History is full of battles, but only a few transform into stories that echo across centuries. Musashi's first famous duel wasn't just about blades. It was about psychology, control, and the death of anger itself. He was still young, barely out of his teens, when he challenged one of the most respected swordsmen of his era, Arima Kihei, a man older, polished, and seasoned in combat. Kihei wasn't just another fighter. He carried the confidence of a man who had already proven himself. To him, Musashi was just an ambitious boy, reckless enough to invite his own death. When the day of the duel came, Arima Kihei stood tall, sword gleaming, posture perfect. He expected a traditional fight, with ritual and formality. He expected Musashi to show up with a proper weapon, to bow, to honor the codes of the samurai. That's what warriors did. That's what respect demanded. But Musashi wasn't like other men. He didn't come dressed for ceremony. He didn't carry a polished blade. Instead, he walked onto the field with something almost insulting, a crude wooden stick. The crowd laughed. Arima mocked him. "Is this a joke? Are you too poor to own a real weapon?" He sneered. Every word was designed to humiliate, to draw Musashi into the emotional storm that consumes so many fighters. A lesser man would have snapped. He would have thrown his stick aside, pulled out steel, screamed back, swung wildly just to prove he wasn't weak. That's what Kihei wanted for Musashi to react, for anger to blind him before the fight even began. But Musashi didn't move. He didn't flinch. He didn't defend himself. He let the taunts wash over him like waves breaking on stone. His silence was unnerving. The wooden stick in his hand looked pathetic to everyone else. But to Musashi it was more than enough. Because the real weapon wasn't in his grip. It was in his mind. Then, without warning, Musashi struck. Brutal, fast, precise. The crude stick slammed into Kihei with deadly force. Before the crowd could even process what had happened, the seasoned swordsman crumpled. No theatrics. No screams. No rage-fueled outburst. Just a clean, cold, merciless end. That was the moment people began to understand who Musashi was becoming. He hadn't won by swinging harder or faster. He hadn't relied on brute strength or flashy techniques. He won because he was untouchable, because no insult could drag him into anger. No humiliation could push him off balance. Kihei tried to pull his strings, but Musashi had already cut them. The lesson here is brutal in its simplicity. Anger doesn't make you stronger, it makes you obvious. It hands your enemy the map to your downfall. When you fight with rage, you fight blind. But when you fight with clarity, with stillness, with silence, you see everything. You become unpredictable. You become dangerous. Imagine the terror Arima must have felt in those last seconds, not just because he was about to lose his life, but because he realized he had never actually been in control. He thought his mockery would break a boy. Instead, it revealed a monster wrapped in silence. And once Musashi revealed that void, that refusal to be provoked, the fight was already over. That duel wasn't just Musashi's victory, it was his declaration. He showed Japan that he wasn't another hot-headed fighter chasing glory. He was something colder, something deadlier, something new. From that day forward, every man who heard his name knew the truth. You couldn't anger him. You couldn't manipulate him. You could only fall to him. But Musashi didn't stop there. This wasn't just about one duel, one victory. This was the foundation of a philosophy that would shape every battle he fought, every lesson he wrote, every legend that grew around his name. He wasn't building muscles, he was building a mind that no one could shake. And here's the question you have to ask yourself. When someone mocks you, when someone disrespects you, when life denies you the recognition you think you deserve, do you become Musashi, or do you become Arima Kihei? Do you go cold, calculating, untouchable, or do you explode, predictable and defeated, before the fight even begins? Because Musashi's story is not a fairy tale, it's a mirror, and when you look into it, you see whether you're controlled or whether you're free. But that wasn't the last time Musashi proved anger was weakness. He didn't just master the sword, he mastered the mind. And that's where his true power lived. The psychology of the blade. If you think Musashi's greatness was only in his arms, you've already missed the point. His sword was sharp, yes. His reflexes were legendary. But the real weapon, the one that made him unbeatable, was his mind. Where other warriors spent their lives polishing steel, Musashi was polishing thought. He understood that battles weren't just won with swords. They were won in silence, in stillness, in the space between anger and action. He was a psychologist long before the word existed, dissecting not only his opponents but himself. Musashi studied the mind as if it were a blade. He realized that anger, unchecked, was rust. It spread quietly. It dulled focus. It slowed reaction. It corrupted judgment. Most men didn't even notice. They believed their rage gave them an edge. They believed fury was fuel. But Musashi saw the opposite. He knew that every moment spent burning with emotion was a moment you weren't seeing clearly. And in a duel where one mistake means death, blindness is suicide. His philosophy boiled down to ruthless simplicity. He wrote, "Do nothing which is of no use." That line sounds small, but it's devastating when you apply it to your own life. How much of your energy is wasted on useless anger? How many arguments have you fought just to prove your pride? How many times have you yelled at someone, only to realize later it accomplished nothing? Every ounce of energy spent on rage is energy stolen from clarity, from precision, from real strength. To Musashi, the mind was a weapon that had to stay sharp. And sharpness doesn't come from thrashing, from noise, from explosions. Sharpness comes from silence. A still blade cuts deepest. A still mind sees everything. When others let anger cloud their vision, Musashi trained himself to keep his clear, unshaken, as if every fight were unfolding in slow motion. That's why he was always steps ahead. His emotions never hijacked his focus. Think of it like this: when someone insults you and you snap, you're not thinking, you're reacting. You're like a dull blade, hacking wildly, hoping to land a hit. But when you stay calm, when you refuse the bait, when you let silence stretch instead of filling it with rage, you're sharpening. You're cutting deeper without moving. And the person who tried to provoke you, they're now the one swinging blindly, losing energy, losing ground. This was Musashi's true genius. He didn't just fight bodies, he fought egos. He understood that most men weren't defeated by steel, they were defeated by their own pride. A single insult could make them reckless. A flash of rage could make them predictable. All he had to do was stand calm and let them unravel themselves, and they always did. But Musashi's philosophy doesn't just belong on a battlefield. Look at your own life. How many times do you let anger drag you where you never wanted to go? How many times do you let it dull your focus, blind your vision, sabotage your relationships, poison your progress? You might not be holding a sword, but every day you're dueling with your boss, your partner, strangers online, the world itself. And if anger is rusting your mind, you're walking into every duel unarmed. Musashi chose a different path. He trained emptiness. He trained clarity. He trained himself to see insults as noise, disrespect as irrelevant, obstacles as inevitable. His calm wasn't passive, it was predatory. He wasn't suppressing emotion, he was starving it, watching his opponents feed their rage while he sharpened his silence. That's why he became more than a warrior. He became a legend. The psychology of the blade is the psychology of survival. Cut away what weakens you, polish what strengthens you, and nothing weakens you more than anger. Musashi knew that if his mind was still, his blade could move like lightning. His body would follow the command of clarity, not chaos. And in that perfect harmony of silence and steel, he was untouchable. But this raises a brutal question. If Musashi saw anger as rust, what exactly is causing yours? Why do you get angry in the first place, and why does it keep owning you? Why you get angry, and why you keep losing? Let's turn the blade inward. Why do you get angry? Not Musashi, not Arima Kihei. You, right here, right now. Why does your chest burn when someone disrespects you? Why do you clench your fists in traffic? Why do you slam doors, raise your voice, lose your focus? The answer isn't what you think. It's not about the insult. It's not about the situation. It's about entitlement. You get angry because you believe the world should bend to your will. You believe people should treat you fairly, respectfully, kindly. You believe life owes you convenience. That strangers should drive the way you want. That friends should speak to you the way you prefer. That the universe should line up just so, giving you what you want, when you want it. And when it doesn't, rage. That's the root. Not strength, not justice. Entitlement. Here's the truth. Musashi saw long before most men could: the world doesn't owe you anything. Respect, fairness, recognition, none of it is guaranteed. Expecting it is like expecting the ocean not to send waves. It's foolish, and the more you demand it, the more fragile you become. Because now anyone who withholds it has power over you. One slight, one insult, one act of disrespect, and suddenly your emotions are their property. That's why you keep losing. You think anger makes you untouchable, but it's the opposite. It's the easiest handle on your soul. All someone has to do is deny you what you feel entitled to, and you'll do the rest, burning bridges, wrecking relationships, sabotaging yourself. You might win the argument, but you lose the war, and the demon grows stronger every time you feed it. Musashi's answer was brutal but effective. He stripped entitlement out of his life. He didn't wait for the world to harden him. He hardened himself. He walked alone, slept on dirt floors, ate sparingly, rejected comfort. While other warriors enjoyed luxuries, Musashi chose discomfort. Why? Because comfort is attachment, and attachment is the root of anger. If you cling to ease, to recognition, to status, you've already handed the world your strings. Musashi trained to have no strings, no expectations, no illusions that life should treat him a certain way. Imagine that level of detachment. You can insult him, he doesn't care. You can ignore him, he doesn't notice. You can deny him comfort, he already denied it to himself. What can you take from a man who expects nothing? Nothing. And because you can't take anything from him, you can't provoke him. That's why he was dangerous. That's why he was free. But think about your own life. How often does your anger come not from real danger, but from your imagined entitlement? You're mad at the rude cashier because you think strangers owe you politeness. You're furious at the slow driver because you think the road owes you speed. You're raging at your partner because you think love owes you constant validation. Strip away the entitlement, and what's left? Silence, stillness, calm. Musashi didn't preach this as some abstract philosophy. He lived it. He wasn't attached to reputation, luxury, or fairness. He trained himself to expect nothing, so he couldn't be rattled by anything. And that's the peace most men today will never grasp. You don't lose because life is unfair. You lose because you demand fairness from life. You lose because you expect the world to move the way you want. And when it doesn't, your anger betrays you. So ask yourself, what are you entitled to? What comforts, what respect, what recognition do you think the world must hand you? Because that's exactly where your enemy can strike. That's the lever they can pull. That's the place your anger will erupt, predictable as the sunrise. Musashi trained himself to have no lever, no button, no handle. He walked through a world of chaos untouched because he knew what most men deny. The root of anger is attachment. Kill attachment, and you kill the fire. But Musashi didn't just strip himself of comfort. He built something in its place. A practice, a code, a way of training the mind into emptiness. And this was the real secret to his power, training the void. Musashi didn't just talk about calm. He trained it. He understood something most people today ignore. Control isn't a gift, it's a discipline. You don't stumble into self-mastery. You forge it, blow by blow, choice by choice, until your mind becomes as sharp as the edge of a blade. To Musashi, that discipline was the art of emptiness, what he called training the void. Think about it. Most people try to beat anger with weak strategies, counting to 10, screaming into pillows, doing push-ups until the fire fades. But Musashi knew these were surface-level tricks. You don't conquer anger by venting it. You conquer it by starving it. You conquer it by removing the soil it grows in, comfort, attachment, expectation, and replacing it with silence, stillness, void. His training was brutal. He lived like a ghost, moving from place to place, carrying little, owning less. He refused luxuries, not because he couldn't have them, but because he knew luxuries weaken the mind. Comfort softens you, and a soft mind is easily provoked. By sleeping outside, eating meager meals, and stripping away attachment, Musashi built a mind that could not be rattled by insults or inconveniences. Nothing you took from him could shake him, because he had already taken it from himself. One of his methods was voluntary hardship. While others enjoyed warm beds, Musashi chose the dirt. While others sought recognition, he embraced obscurity. In today's world, that might look like cutting out your small addictions. Cold showers, no sugar, no social media, anything that exposes how fragile you are, and then killing it. Because what is anger, if not entitlement in disguise? You don't rage at slow Wi-Fi unless you feel owed speed. You don't scream at rude people unless you feel owed kindness. Cut the entitlement, and you cut the anger. Another practice was the silence of observation. Musashi trained himself to go days without speaking, to let silence sharpen his focus. He knew that reacting instantly was weakness. Every insult he didn't answer, every taunt he let pass, was strength added to his void. Try it yourself. The next time someone insults you, don't defend yourself. Don't explain. Just watch. The silence will choke them. The power shifts instantly, because in that moment, they realize they can't move you. And a man who can't be moved is a man to be feared. Perhaps his most terrifying practice was meditation on death. Every morning, Musashi contemplated his own mortality, not in fear, but in acceptance. He would imagine himself already dead, already gone, stripped of everything he could lose. Why? Because a man who isn't afraid to die cannot be shaken by anything less. If you're ready to face death itself, what's a rude comment? What's traffic? What's rejection? Nothing. The void swallows it all. He wrote, "Think lightly of yourself and deeply of the world." To Musashi, this wasn't poetry. It was instruction. He thought lightly of his own ego, his pride, his comfort, his entitlement, and therefore nothing could wound him. He thought deeply of the world, its chaos, its suffering, its inevitability, and therefore nothing surprised him. Anger fades when death is your companion, because suddenly life's small insults become laughable compared to the abyss. So how do you train your void? You don't need a sword. You don't need a battlefield. You start by stripping one comfort. You remove one entitlement. You practice one silence. Kill one weakness today, and tomorrow you'll feel a little more untouchable. The more you subtract, the more you see what Musashi saw, that anger only survives when it has fuel. Remove the fuel, and the fire dies. This is what made Musashi unstoppable. He wasn't feeding the demon. He was starving it, day after day, year after year, until it had nothing left to bite. And when you looked into his eyes before a duel, you didn't see a man burning with rage. You saw emptiness, stillness, a void so deep it swallowed your own courage. And that's the truth. No reaction is the ultimate weapon. You don't have to swing harder, yell louder, or burn hotter. You just have to stand calm while the world tries to provoke you. That silence will terrify everyone who thought they could own your emotions. But Musashi knew there was still one root left to cut. Because underneath every outburst, every rage, every flame, there was something darker feeding it, ego. And if you don't kill the ego, you'll never kill the fire.
Kill the ego, kill the fire. At the core of every outburst, behind every flash of rage, lies something uglier than anger itself. Ego. Ego is the real demon, wearing anger like a mask. You don't get angry just because the world is cruel. You get angry because your self-image has been bruised. Someone challenges your worth, and suddenly you burn. Someone ignores you, and suddenly you erupt. Someone dares to make you feel small, and you lash out, not because the act was unbearable, but because your ego couldn't stand the wound. Here's the brutal truth. Anger is not about justice, it's about pride. You think you're defending yourself, but what you're really defending is the fragile image you've built. And the more you cling to that image, the easier it is for the world to break you. Because once your identity depends on how others see you, every insult is a dagger, every rejection a sword, every slight an earthquake. Musashi understood this better than anyone. He didn't just kill anger, he went straight for the root. He killed ego. He starved it, burned it, buried it so deep that no insult could resurrect it. And that was the secret to his terrifying power. He had nothing left to defend. A man with no pride to wound is a man you cannot provoke. Look at how he lived. While other warriors dressed in silks and armor, Musashi wore plain clothes. While others sought titles, he wandered nameless. While others clung to the comfort of recognition, he detached from it completely. He didn't crave applause. He didn't seek validation. He didn't care if history remembered him. And ironically, that's why history could never forget him. He wrote, "The more you seek to gain the favor of men, the less you gain from yourself." Musashi knew that every desire for approval was a chain. If your self-worth depends on being liked, anyone can enslave you with a frown. If your pride depends on being respected, anyone can control you with an insult. If your confidence depends on being seen, anyone can destroy you with silence. And if your image depends on being strong, anyone can expose you by calling you weak. Think about how much of your anger comes from ego. You don't explode because the driver cut you off. You explode because your pride says, "How dare they disrespect me?" You don't rage at your partner because of what they said. You rage because your ego screams, "They don't value me enough." The demon isn't the world, it's the fragile self-image you keep feeding. And as long as that image exists, you'll always be vulnerable. Musashi's solution was merciless. Destroy it. He walked the earth like a shadow, detached from praise, indifferent to insult. He understood that if you burn the ego to ashes, there's nothing left for the world to attack. Words bounce off. Disrespect dissolves. Rejection becomes irrelevant. A man with no ego doesn't need to defend, doesn't need to scream, doesn't need to rage. He becomes untouchable. Not because the world changed, but because he no longer has anything to lose. This is why Musashi was feared. Imagine facing a man who couldn't be provoked. You spit insults. He doesn't blink. You mock his status. He doesn't flinch. You deny him comfort. He doesn't notice. And when the moment comes, he strikes. Not from anger, not from pride, but from pure awareness. Cold, still, precise. That is power stripped of ego. Power stripped of fire. It's not flashy. It's not loud. But it's unstoppable. And this is where most men today fail. They build armor to protect their egos. They chase titles, money, status, validation, hoping it will shield them from insult. But all that armor does is make them heavier, slower, easier to strike. The real warrior doesn't add armor. He burns the ego that needs protecting. He walks lighter, freer, deadlier. So if you want to kill your anger, don't just suppress it. Kill the source. Starve the pride that screams for validation. Let your image die. Stop needing to be respected. Stop needing to be admired. Stop needing to prove yourself. Because the man who has nothing to prove is the one no one can provoke. That was Musashi's final lesson. Ego is weakness disguised as importance. The more you feed it, the more fragile you become. But when you burn it down, you stand in the ashes untouchable. Insults become noise. Criticism becomes data. Rejection becomes irrelevant. And anger dies, because there's nothing left to defend. But Musashi's philosophy didn't remain theory. It was tested in blood. And his most legendary test came in a duel that shook Japan. The battle with Sasaki Kojiro. A clash that proved, once and for all, that anger blinds and calm kills. The final duel, Musashi versus Sasaki Kojiro. Every legend has a climax, a moment that defines not just a man but the myth that follows him. For Musashi, that moment came on a small island in 1612. His opponent was no ordinary warrior. Sasaki Kojiro was already famous across Japan. He was elegant, precise, deadly, with a blade so long, it was nicknamed the clothes-drying pole. His technique was graceful and efficient, honed to perfection. To many, Kojiro wasn't just a fighter, he was untouchable. Facing him meant death. But Musashi was no ordinary man. He didn't just want to defeat Kojiro, he wanted to destroy him psychologically, before the duel even began. And he knew the most reliable weapon against a man consumed by ego and pride was not rage, not speed, not brute strength. It was time. The duel was set for early morning. Kojiro arrived on the island with his supporters, ready, confident, waiting. The sun rose higher, the waves broke against the shore, but Musashi was nowhere to be seen. Minutes passed, then hours. Kojiro's confidence began to curdle into irritation, then frustration, then fury. Where was Musashi? Was he mocking him? Was this disrespect intentional? Every passing moment was a dagger in Kojiro's pride. By the time Musashi finally appeared, Kojiro was already burning alive inside. Musashi stepped off a boat, slowly, calmly, like he had all the time in the world. In his hands wasn't a polished steel blade. It was a wooden sword, carved crudely from an oar on the ride over. To Kojiro, this wasn't just an insult, it was humiliation. He was a national icon, facing a man who hadn't even bothered to bring a proper weapon. Rage boiled over. His pride was shredded. His ego screamed for blood. Kojiro lunged first, unleashing his signature technique with the long blade, fast and precise. But Musashi had already won before the strike even came. His calm eyes tracked every movement. His silence had sharpened his focus. His void had drowned every flicker of fear. While Kojiro swung with anger, Musashi moved with clarity. One blow, one strike of the wooden sword against Kojiro's skull. The master collapsed, dead before his pride even hit the sand. That was Musashi's genius. He didn't win by overpowering Kojiro. He won by letting Kojiro overpower himself. He weaponized patience. He turned silence into poison. He knew that anger blinds, pride makes you predictable, and ego kills faster than steel. By the time Kojiro raised his blade, the fight was already finished. Musashi wasn't just calm, he was lethal calm, the kind that makes other men unravel before they've even begun. Think about the brilliance of it. Musashi could have shown up on time. He could have fought honorably with steel. He could have met Kojiro on equal terms. But he didn't care about honor, about reputation, about how people judged him. He cared about one thing: victory. And he knew that a furious man is already halfway to defeat. Kojiro walked into the fight already blinded by rage. Musashi walked into it empty, composed, silent. One man was chained by pride. The other had burned his ego to ashes. The outcome was inevitable. Now ask yourself, how many battles have you lost before they even began? Because you let anger own you. How many times have you been manipulated into failure? Because someone knew exactly which insult to use, exactly which delay to cause, exactly which button to push. Kojiro's mistake wasn't that he lacked skill. It was that he let his pride write the ending for him. And you make the same mistake every time you rage at disrespect, every time you explode when the world mocks you. Musashi's victory wasn't just the death of Kojiro. It was the death of the illusion that anger makes you strong. That duel became legend because it revealed the opposite truth. Calm kills, silence wins. Emptiness is unstoppable. The island where Kojiro fell is still remembered today, not because it was the site of a clash of equals, but because it was the place where Musashi proved once and for all that rage is weakness, that a man who can't be provoked is a man you cannot defeat. But Musashi's lessons didn't die with his duels. They became a code, a modern path you can walk today, if you're willing to kill anger, kill ego, and train the void inside yourself. Musashi's code for the modern world: when you strip away the katanas, the duels, the samurai rituals. Musashi's way wasn't about swords at all. It was about psychology, about freedom, about becoming untouchable in a world built to provoke you. The truth is, you don't need to live in feudal Japan to walk Musashi's path. His code isn't locked in the past. It's a map for anyone willing to kill the demon of anger and burn the fragile ego that feeds it. So what does Musashi's way look like in modern life? It starts with emptiness. Stop expecting the world to move the way you want. People will insult you. They will disrespect you. Life will throw chaos in your face. Accept it. Stop clinging to fairness, because fairness is an illusion. The moment you release expectation, anger loses its grip. Nothing can rattle a man who expects nothing. Next, detachment. Musashi didn't cling to comfort, to luxury, to applause. Why? Because everything you cling to becomes a weapon in someone else's hands. If you crave approval, you can be enslaved by rejection. If you need respect, you can be controlled by insult. If you depend on comfort, you can be broken by hardship. Detach. Strip away one comfort, one craving, one soft weakness at a time. The less you need, the harder you are to move. Then comes precision. Musashi said, "Do nothing which is of no use." Anger is useless. Ego is useless. Half the things you obsess over are useless. Precision means cutting away the noise. Words that don't matter. Fights that don't matter. Pride that doesn't matter. It means choosing silence when silence is stronger. Action when action is sharper. Stillness when stillness is deadlier. Most people waste their energy proving themselves. Musashi conserved his energy for the single strike that ended everything. And finally, silence. We live in an age of noise. Everyone's screaming. Everyone's defending. Everyone's explaining themselves endlessly. But Musashi knew silence is power. The quieter you are, the more unpredictable you become. The more you let others scream while you stay still, the faster they exhaust themselves. Silence unnerves people. It makes them reveal themselves while you reveal nothing. That is strategy. That is control. Now picture this. Tomorrow, someone insults you. Instead of defending yourself, you pause. You say nothing. You watch. They expect you to react, but you don't. In that moment, the power shifts. You are no longer their puppet. You are the one holding the strings. Or imagine sitting in traffic, the usual rage bubbling up, but instead of feeding it, you breathe. You remind yourself, the world owes me nothing. Suddenly the demon loses its grip. You walk through fire with calm eyes while everyone else screams. That is Musashi's way, and the ultimate reminder, death. Musashi meditated on it every morning, not to become morbid, but to become free. When you stare into the reality that life is temporary, you stop wasting your fire on trivial things. An insult becomes small. A delay becomes nothing. Anger fades because compared to death, what's left to fear? Musashi wrote, "The way of the warrior is resolute acceptance of death." And in that acceptance, he found the secret to living untouchable. So what's the code? Stop reacting. Start watching. Stop expecting. Start detaching. Stop screaming. Start sharpening. Stop defending. Start observing. Stop clinging. Start cutting. This isn't about pretending to be a samurai. It's about becoming dangerous in the only way that matters, by killing the demon inside you. The one that makes you predictable. The one that makes you weak. The one that turns you into a puppet, dancing on strings pulled by strangers. The quieter you are, the more lethal you become. The less you cling to ego, the freer you are. The closer you live to death, the less anything can provoke you. That's Musashi's gift to you. Not fairy tales, not swords, but a philosophy sharp enough to cut the chains you've been dragging your whole life. And now the question lingers. Will you keep feeding the demon until it devours you? Or will you starve it, kill it, and step into the silence Musashi mastered Because once you do, you'll realize the same truth he carved into history. With every duel, real power isn't rage. Real power is stillness.